the bolts with the socket set
while we're sitting. Is this a crime?
Didn't get caught.
So I was going to say, surely.
Let me Google this real quick and see if it's a crime.
Look, I think the statute of limitations has since passed on this. So please tell me if I did something illegal.
This podcast is sponsored by nobody. I am paying for all of this myself. There is no sponsor. Sorry.
Thank you so much for being a part of I Swear This Really Happened, my true story storytelling podcast, where people can tell any story they want at all from their life, as long as it's true. I'm really, really stoked to have you guys as guests. I know I've been on your podcast at least twice that I can remember. I actually still have the links to those episodes. And so I really wanted to get you guys on this podcast because one, I miss your faces. Let's just be honest. It's been like 8 years. And then two, I want to hear what you got. I want to give you a platform to tell any story that maybe you've never been able to tell before, or maybe you've told 1,000 times and you just want to tell again. But starting with Justin, feel free to introduce yourselves. Tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, and all that good stuff.
Yeah. My name is Justin Strandland, co-host of Mind Gap podcast with Doug here. And we've been doing Mind Gap we're in year 7, right? Or year 6?
We're in just over year 6.
Just over year 6 now. So a lot of episodes later, and we have a lot of fun doing it. Outside of Mind Gap, I've got a production company and I'm a filmmaker and live in Chicago currently with my wife and my dog, Abby Road. She's a blue heeler. And we're going to be moving to Michigan pretty soon. So there's big life changes coming up for me.
Excellent. That's awesome. Me. And your production company, is it mostly film? Is it all sorts of stuff? Do you produce live events? What's your kind of threshold there?
Yeah. So we're a film and video production company. So we do, it's called 2 East 8th Productions, like an address. And we do corporate video. The corporate stuff is what, pays the bills and keeps the lights on. Yeah. The more boring the content, the better it pays is the general rule.
Yes. 100%.
Yeah. So, we do that to keep the bills on, pay the bills to keep the lights on. And then, we do short films and sketch comedy videos, and we're doing our first feature film this year. And that's more to satisfy the creative desire. And hopefully one day people will pay big money for those things.
Yeah. And what's your plan for your short film?
The short films, we're shopping them around to, we've got one that just came out last fall. And then we've got another one coming out February 1st. The one coming out February 1st is called The Life and Debt of a Liberal Arts Major. And we're going to premiere it on YouTube and then shop it around to some film festivals, which a lot of them have been doing a great job figuring out how to do virtual film festivals during the pandemic. So we're excited to see if we can get into some of those and have some support there. So that's what we're doing with the shorts, and the feature film. We're hoping to obviously distribute that one somewhere.
Perfect. That's awesome. Well, I look forward to seeing what you do with it. That's so exciting. Thank
you very much.
We're grown-ups, guys. We get to do
We're doing it.
We're doing things.
We're doing it. Well, awesome. Thanks for being on the podcast, Justin. It's good to see you.
You
and
as
then
well.
Doug, the floor is yours.
Hi, everyone. I'm Doug Cochran, and I am the other half of the Mind Gap podcast. Like Justin said, we've been doing this since 2015. We just recorded episode 331. So going strong.
331. That's wild. How often do you guys do an episode?
Every week. once a week.
Has it really been 331 weeks?
Yeah, well, there's been like 2 weeks where we didn't do them, so
Right.
it's not entirely accurate, but pretty darn close. We were very pleased to go about 5 years without missing a week, so which was really exciting. In my spare time, I'm an instructional designer, so design training content, try to make it as fun as possible. And I spend most of my time doing stuff with the podcast. I also we live stream our podcasts on Tuesdays,
Oh,
at
that's
8 p.m.
cool.
Central on our YouTube channel. So you can tune in and interact with us while we record it. I also do a video game live stream on Saturdays at 8 p.m. on our YouTube channel as well. So you guys can hang out and watch me play games. And usually we do some community games so people can play along with us, or we have special guests, which is pretty exciting. So that's where I spend the bulk of my time.
That's cool. I didn't know you guys live streamed. That's
Yes.
awesome. And people, can they interact on those live streams or?
Absolutely. And that's
cool.
actually what kind of makes it the fun. I mean, we used to hear people say, I listen to your podcast. Our podcast is basically like pop culture, nerd stuff. Just we kind of follow wherever the conversation goes. And a lot of times people are like, I wish I could say or interact with whatever you guys are saying, because either you're wrong or I agree. And now people can do that. They can type in the chat and join in with us. And oftentimes we've actually grown a small community of people that now actually will provide content for us, ideas for different things, and it's a lot of fun. So
sometimes
That's cool.
they'll steer the episode. They'll
Yeah.
say something and we'll abandon every topic we had. We're like, that's what we're talking about today.
That's what we want to dig into. So
Yeah.
it's really
That's
fun.
cool. Are you guys on Patreon or any kind of support
We
platform?
are actually, yeah, we are on patreon.com/mindgap podcast. It's just, if people really want to support us, we have one tier. It's $5. You get early access to content and a special channel all to yourself in our Discord server. And we're looking to produce more content that involves our Patreon suggestions as well. So yeah, it's been pretty good. Been pretty cool having some people support us, actually seeing some checks come in for our content. It's great.
Yeah. And it's so interesting because I remember when you guys first started planning this podcast, and just to see how it's grown and to see how it's lasted is just awesome. It's just so cool. I'm so happy for
Yeah.
you.
Thank you so
great.
much.
You're welcome. You're welcome. So without further ado, I want to hear the stories that you guys brought to share today.
Awesome. Who's going first? Justin, do you want to go first?
Want to flip a coin?
You want to flip a coin?
I don't have a coin, but can we flip one?
You want to do rock,
right, I'll
paper,
go.
scissors?
I'll go first.
Okay.
This has already gotten far too complicated.
Very good.
I wanted to tell a story. Probably one of the dumbest things I've done. And I've done a lot of dumb things, but this was the time when I myself and a friend tried to steal a fire hydrant. And I want to preface this with I was in college at the time, living in the Quad Cities, and my dad was a Moline firefighter. So had I gotten caught, this could have been disastrous, because a firefighter's son gets caught stealing fire hydrant. Probably not a good headline, for the local paper. So we were, my friend Steve and I were driving around in his car, and we came past this construction site. There was like a new condo association or something going up. And in the grass, we just saw this fire hydrant, and we're like, oh, we should totally come back. And like, college kids were like, this would look so cool in your room, right? Whatever. So we're like, we should come back tonight and grab this because there's too many people out right now. So we drove around and we had our day, and we went to, there's a place called Farm and Fleet, which is like it's where a lot of farmers get their supplies, and you can get, all sorts of stuff. Headlight. We got basically like caper material, if you will. So we got like our headlamps and like gloves, and we were all like set to dark clothes, and we were set to go. We get back to this site as soon as night falls, and we park where they're doing the construction. There's a big field, and then there's a parking lot. So we parked in that parking lot and did the low crouch, like run across the field. We were in our minds, this was epic movie level shit. And we're, running across the field. We had to jump down into the construction site and get our way through. And then we finally come up to the other side where the fire hydrant was. And it was right alongside the road. So there were cars that were passing. So we hit the deck, and we were like army crawling up to it. We got there, and I didn't realize, I should have, with my dad being a firefighter, didn't realize that fire hydrants need a big pipe to pump in the water. So this fire hydrant had already been attached to probably a 20-foot long giant black pipe that was about the width of the fire hydrant. And we were like, it was like ratcheted into there, like with bolts. And we're like, son of a bitch, we didn't think of this. Why would we? Luckily, he's a gearhead. Steve's a gearhead. So he had tools in his car. So we We go back. He pulls out a socket set. We go back in. And so now we're sitting there trying to undo the bolts with the socket set.
Is this a crime?
Didn't get caught.
I was
So
going to say, surely
Let me
it's a
Google
crime.
this real quick and see if
Yeah.
it's a crime.
look, I think the statute of limitations has since passed on this. So please tell me if I did something illegal. But every time a car would go by, we'd like get low again, and then we'd come back up, and we were trying so hard. Again, these people who put these things in are not idiots. They'd welded it, and there was no way we were getting these things off with just our hands and a small socket set. So we worked at it for probably about, I don't know, I'd say we were down there for probably 20 minutes until I looked down. I felt something on my arm, and I looked down, and I was like, it must have been grass or something. Then I felt something again. I looked down. I had 3 small spiders crawling around my arm. And I was like, oh shit. And I hate spiders.
Yeah,
And
no,
Doug knows
nope.
how much I hate them. Yeah. I was like, oh man, that sucks. And then as I brushed them off, I looked, my headlamp moved right in front of me, and I saw like 20 spiders. And we were apparently laying on top of like a spider's nest, I guess. And I like looked around, and there were spiders up, like there must have been at least 50 spiders crawling around in total. And I just look, and so me not liking spiders, like, fuck this. I got up, and we had been trying to be so sneaky. And at that point I was like, nope, I'm out. Start brushing myself off. And I just take off running, not even through the construction site, just down the sidewalk, trying to get back to his car. And Steve's like, there he is with all these tools, just fully abandoned him. And, I was like, you know what? That's what I get for trying to steal a fire hydrant. I get covered in spiders. And that was that. Yeah. And then we went home.
That's gross, Justin.
Yeah.
So
That's a gross story.
when you went to steal the fire hydrant and you realized that it was connected to, a water system, a plumbing system, why was
Giant
that
pipe.
not enough of a deterrent? What was it about this particular fire hydrant that made you have to have it and deinstall the city's waterworks?
Well, so the thing was, it still hadn't been put into the ground and connected to the water main yet. Like it was
Okay.
sitting in the grass, and
Got
it was
it.
ready to be like, they were probably going to dig out where it was and like turn it up and then,
Yeah.
connect it in and everything. So nothing was flowing through it. Everything was on its side. So we thought, and the rationale, who knows, but we thought, well, we've come this far, and it's just a few nuts and bolts. We could probably get this off. So we were like, we've already bought things from Farm and Fleet. We made the decision to come out here. We army crawled, we decided to do this. So let's just commit and let's get this giant tube off, and then we can have our fire hydrant.
And then
Yeah.
what was the plan for the fire hydrant? It was just going to be a nice statue, or
Oh yeah, it was going to go into his room. It was going to take it home, and it would be our unofficial trophy. We had no official plans for it other than just to say we've got a fire hydrant.
Yeah,
Is this
yeah.
the
And when the
equivalent of
cops show
people
up looking
stealing-
for it, just hide
Stealing
it.
like signs, like that
Oh,
people then hang up in their rooms,
Right, like the yield signs and
or just street signs,
street signs. Yeah. I
Yeah.
guess it could have been the equivalent. Yeah. And it wasn't until about a year or two later, I'm like, again, with my dad being a fireman, like that was probably the worst possible thing out of all the things to steal in the municipality. That was probably the one worst thing I could have probably stolen or tried to steal.
Yeah, I like to imagine your dad going to work the weekend after you got caught, and his friends being like, "So,
Yeah.
of all things to steal."
Got kind of a shit kid, huh?
Yeah.
Huh
Hey,
there,
Mike, I saw your son was in the paper.
So it turns out this whole fireman thing runs in the family, I guess.
Yeah, right.
What
Man.
it was we just wanted to learn how a fire hydrant worked. So we thought if we could take it home and study it, it'd be for fire science is what we wanted to do.
Now, based on the story, it
Yeah.
sounds like that is not the first time you've taken something that belonged to the public. Is this true?
Well, what are do we look up the statute of limitations on this? What is the
Yeah,
where am
well, I
getting
mean,
My
you're
that?
internet's
moving
not
soon,
working,
so it doesn't
Justin.
matter.
I don't know.
Yeah, you're moving away. It doesn't matter.
That's so true. Grand
That's why you're
Rapids,
crossing
here I
state
come.
lines, so now it's a felony.
I'll
So
wait.
it's
I'll
okay.
wait and post this after you've left. So.
Yeah, that city doesn't know what about to hit it. Yeah. Honestly, I can't remember stealing any other like public works things. I did in high school. I had buddies who did have signs in their rooms, so like
Oh, yeah.
they had adventures, and so maybe that was subconsciously informing me in my other thing. The thing is, I didn't steal anything, but we definitely were not respectful of property. Like there was there was a lot of things in my history that I wish I had taken better care of. For same guy, we used to work at a place called it was the Cellar, and it was like a 7th and 8th grade weekly dance that was sponsored by the Park District. And I was the DJ there, and he was like the door guy, and there was other people. And so we had broken in. We had a paintball gun, and we didn't break in. He had keys. We had keys. We opened up. I don't remember. I don't remember why we decided to go there, but we decided to use this cooler as target practice, and it was a styrofoam cooler. The paint went right through all over the walls. And we were like, oh, we should probably get out of here. Instead of cleaning it up, we're like, we better go. Of course, the next day, whoever runs it came in and they're like, okay, so no forced entry. So who has keys? That's an idiot.
Yep.
And it very quickly got narrowed down to us, yeah. And it was just, well, why did you do that? And Doug knows this excuse. I don't know. It felt like a good idea at the time.
Yeah. It always does, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It always seems like a perfectly good idea at the time.
When I was younger, I will have to say I was an asshole. I will fully admit I was not a great person. I'd like to think that I've become a much better person in my older age.
Kids are so stupid. Like they're so dumb. And there's a point where it's forgivable.
Yeah.
And there's a point where you're like, come on, you know better.
Yeah,
and I don't look forward to that with my daughter, where I'm gonna be like, come on, you know better.
I should have gotten slapped upside the head way more than I did. Yeah.
And I love the logic there. You're like, I know, I'll use keys so they don't know like anybody broke in. And you're like, no, they'll narrow it down to the 5 people that have keys to this.
Absolutely.
Place. You literally did their work for them. What are you doing?
I never claimed I was smart,
Hey,
I'm just a pretty face. That's all I am.
That's kind of what I like about with my daughter right now. I'll run logic circles around her, where she'll say something. I'm like, oh yeah, well, what about this? And immediately she just runs into a mental wall. And I'm like, I'm like, you're going to get better at lying. And this is going to be harder for me in the future. But for now, slam dunk,
He's like, I outsmart my toddler every
That's
day.
Right. You'll be 6 and I still outsmart you. What's up now, kid?
Speaking of which, Doug, do you have a rival story that you think is better than?
Well, I have a story about being a horny teenager in Disney World. So
there you go.
We go that way. So
there you go.
By the way, real quick, Justin, I lived in Rock Island for a while. I went to school there, college there. And I remember distinctly one night in the summer standing out on the porch of our house we were renting, and we were across from a church. And in the night, we heard some noises. My roommate and I went out there and looked, and we saw just running across the parking lot from the shadows into the spotlight was a young man carrying 2 hubcaps. And then he ran and then went back into the shadows across the parking lot. And I was like, I think that kid just stole those hubcaps. Was that you?
I was going to say,
No.
Did you guys meet back then?
No.
It's weird. Our paths could have very easily crossed, because when I was living down there going to junior college, Doug was down there at his university college.
College, yeah.
College, yeah. We had no idea we were down there, but ships in the night. And then years later we met.
And then we met at a job.
I had no interest in anything cars. I've never been a car guy. My interest is purely in, municipal works and things like that.
Yeah, it was very entertaining. I'm like, that kid is just jogging, carrying 2 hubcaps. I'm like, okay, well, those are being stolen. Okay,
There's a decent.
I like how Doug's like, he was struggling to breathe. Justin, was that you?
As he wheezes,
Yeah. He stops midway in the spotlight, puts him down, and goes, "Oh God, my chest." Okay, here we go.
So I'm a Disney guy. My mom started taking me to Disney World when I was 18 months old, and she basically took us every 2 years ever since. So I've gone there an embarrassingly lot amount of times. That does make sense, but I went there a lot, and I got married there. I'm a big Disney World guy. It's my jam. You got married for the longest time. I did. I got married at Disney. I was like, let's have a destination wedding where people can have fun and we're not going to be too stuffy. And in the middle of this vacation, let's be a small ceremony with 2 people getting married, and we'll just have a blast. So it was awesome. I highly recommend it. So, and they did all the planning for you, which was even better. So they took care of everything because they had partners with all these caterers and everything. So you don't have to plan shit. It was awesome. So I love Disney. For the longest time, it was like the perfect vacation because it's best service. It's fun. It's guaranteed good time. And so I saw that as a kid, the magic of everything happening, in your imagination. Look at these characters, they're real, and seeing the decorations, the parades, the fireworks. It's amazing. As an adult, I get to see that with my daughter. I'm actually taking her very soon. We're going to go and watch her mind explode. But then there's the perspective of the teenager who's also like going through puberty and realizing that, oh, I'm from rural Missouri where we have a non-diverse selection of people, and you kind of get used to that. And then when you go out to a large place like Disney World, where there's people from all over the world, you're like, there's a lot of beautiful people in the world, and a lot of them don't live where I live. So when I was 18, my mom took myself and my best friend down to Disney World as sort of like, hey, you graduated, high school and before college, like last hurrah. And that was very special because I was 18. I was legally an adult, which was really cool. My mom was always really cool about like taking us on vacations and kind of just letting us do our own thing. She wasn't a hovering or anything. She wanted us to have fun, and she just removed herself most of the time. But now it's like legit. I'm 18 years old. And there was one section of Disney World that doesn't exist anymore, but it was called Pleasure Island. And if you're thinking of Disney, you're like, that's weird.
What?
That's a weird name. That's a weird name for a place. But it's from the movie Pinocchio, where Pinocchio goes to Pleasure Island with a bunch of other boys. They smoke cigars.
I didn't know that's what that was called either.
They do mounds of cocaine. Yeah.
They do all sorts of fun, hedonistic stuff. And then they turn into donkeys. They're sold into slavery. And then there's a whale at some point. I don't know. I haven't seen the movie in a while. I don't know. It kind of all runs together. But the name of the place they go to is called Pleasure Island. So I'd always seen this place during the day walking through because it was connected to a place called Downtown Disney, which is now called Disney Springs. I'm a nerd. But I would you'd pass through it. And during the day, it was like a ghost town. You could see tumbleweeds. There's just nothing going on because it's a nighttime place. And it reminded me a lot of like going to a school when there's no students. It's just weird and dark, or like imagine going to a hospital. There's no patients, no doctors. It's just weird. It almost seems like a stage where something should happen here, but you don't know, nothing ever is. So I never got to see what it was. But I imagine the conceit of whoever was building this was like, hey, parents are around their shitty kids all day. They probably need a place to go and blow off some steam. So let's create this place where there's bars, there's live music. And the theme was like every day was New Year's Eve. So every night there was this giant countdown to midnight, and then there'd be fireworks that went off, and they would just, celebrate. It was like a big party atmosphere all the time. And it was always mysterious to me because you had to be at least 18 to get in there. So this was the trip where I was going to get to go and check out what Pleasure Island was all about. So first night we get there, I tell my friend, like, we're going to Pleasure Island, man. We got to check this out. So we show up, and daytime tumbleweeds, nothing going. At nighttime, different story. Giant spotlights in the air, moving all the time in the clouds. It's just like, welcome to Pleasure Island. And I'm like, oh boy, what's this all about? So I go up to the gate. I show him my ID, like, here you go. I'm allowed to be in here. Like, okay, kid, get on in. And I'm just like skipping through, like, yay, we're here. It's like a whole new level to a video game opened up. I imagine it's going into the bar the first time when you're 21. I'm like, I'm legally allowed to be here. I'm not sneaking in. This is a whole new thing. So I am
21, sir.
121 here, ready to enter for the first time.
One
right?
alcohol,
Wink.
please.
So I am like, I just want to see what everything is about. So we go, the very first thing we see, it's like a jazz club. We go in, live jazz. It's dark and smoky. They have cigars there. My friend's really into cigars. He buys some. He's smoking them. I'm like, we're adults. We're watching live jazz. I could care less about what's going on. I want to experience what this is. So we stay for a little while, and then we leave. We go on to the next place, which is this actual nightclub, sort of like legit nightclub, which was what I imagine it would be. It's darker decorations. There's a dance floor. There's a screen that projects images like during dances and stuff. And I'm like, whoa, this is pretty wild. We stay there for a little bit, and then we move on to a place that's like a beach club, like almost like a shack, but it's like where live bands play, and there's cover bands playing there, and we go in. It's a really chill vibe, and we hang out there for a while because we're really into music. And I'm amazed at how people just will strike up a conversation. And there was just some random people that were like, hey man, you like this song? I'm like, yeah, it's cool. And it's just interacting with strangers in a different way was just blowing my mind. I'm like, all right, there's one place we got to check out. Let's check out the hip hop club. So we go to this hip hop club, and this place is bumping. There's wall to wall people. The music is loud as hell. You can't hear anything, but there's just a vibe about it. Like, just, you know, there's energy. And I was voted best dancer in high school, probably because I was the only male who was willing to go onto the dance floor and dance. So they're like, yeah, I remember him. He's probably the best dancer. So I just grabbed my friend. I'm like, let's
Best
do this. Let's go
in Missouri.
Yeah,
No,
yeah, it's the
not
best
in
one.
Missouri. Not in Missouri.
It's easy
In-
to be the best one when you're the only one.
In rural Missouri.
In rural Missouri.
I didn't
right?
win state in dancing. So I grabbed him, like, let's do this. Let's get in. And we're just like dancing. We're vibing. It's loud. And then I see this very pretty girl like dancing. And I just sort of like go over and just start dancing near her. I'm not grinding on her or anything like that. We're just dancing. And it's just this weird connection because I'm like, oh, a really pretty girl. Wow. And she's like looking at me. I smile at her. She smiles at me. It's reciprocal. I'm like, whoa, this is wild. This is like stuff that you see in movies, you know, like you meet a pretty person and you just sort of like, I don't know what comes next. So we're just dancing and whatever. And she's with a group of friends. And one of her friends is really short compared to me, like tugs on my shirt. And she says something I can't hear. So I lean in and I think she's asking what my name is. And I'm like, Doug. And she's like, I can't hear you. So we're doing this back and forth, which is really annoying. At one point, I cut my hand over her ears. I'm like, my name is Doug, like the cartoon, because there was a cartoon named Doug. And somehow I thought that was going to help. And she just stared at me like, I don't know what you're saying.
I'm an adult.
I'm
Doug
an
the
adult.
cartoon.
Like an adult cartoon. So we continue dancing. And then I just don't really know what to do next. I'm like, I feel like there's a good vibe here, but I'm 18 and I don't know what the hell I'm doing. So I just kind of like, all right, we're good here. And I grab my friend and we leave. And we just, you know, we leave, we take the bus back to our hotel. I was like, man, that was so cool. Like, this is like what I've seen from media and movies and TV shows. And we go to sleep. We wake up the next day. We go to the food court. We're getting some breakfast. And then I see the girl and her friends walk by. Now, Disney World is a huge place. There are dozens of resorts. There's a lot to do. The odds of running into someone again, kind of slim. The odds of them staying at your resort and seeing them there, even slimmer. And so I see them walk by and I'm like nudging my friend. I'm like, dude, oh my God, it's the girl. And like, she looks at me, I look at her, like I smile and kind of wave and she smiles and waves back. And I was like, this is amazing. Can you believe this shit? And I turned to my friend. I'm like, we're going back to Pleasure Island tonight. And it wasn't like, I'm going to see this girl again. I was like, that was an amazing experience of seeing someone, finding a pretty girl, like having some sort of interaction. I'm like, we're going back tonight because this is going to be awesome again tonight. My expectations are higher. I want to have the same thing, if not greater, happen that night. So we go back. I'm ready. I show my ID again. The guy's like, all right, weirdo, get in here. I go in. I'm like, at this point, I'm like sprinting. I'm like, let's go to all these places again. Go back to the jazz bar. I'm like, whatever. No big deal. This is the same thing. I don't want to go back in here. So we leave. We go back to the fancy place and we come in. It's probably like 7:30, 8 o'clock. Not really dancing hours, but it's pretty dead in there. But I see two girls standing at one of those standing tables. I was like, cool. Let's do the same thing we did last night. I sort of like saunter up and I'm like, hi. And they're like, hi. I'm like, my name's Doug. They're like, okay. They say their names. I'm like, where are you from? They tell me where they're from. I'm like, I'm from Missouri. And then I realize I have nothing else to say. Like the conversation.
They're like, we know, we can tell.
I was wearing cargo shorts, a Blink-182 t-shirt, and a Hurley hat backwards because that's what makes sense, right? It's very late, early 2000s.
Perfect.
It's like, it's what you do. And I realized how beneficial the loud music at the hip hop club was because it didn't allow me to talk. So you just sort of like, just kind of moved your way through the situation. So I'm sitting here just like, I don't know what else to say. On one side of the table are these two girls. They're talking with just each other. On the other side of the table is my friend and I, and we're just talking to each other, and I don't know what to do. Now, I thought, man, I don't want to be rude and just like leave, although that would be perfectly fine, right? I was like, no, that would just seem weird. So I stayed with my friend, and we're just sort of talking, not to each other. I was like, I have a plan. We'll talk for a minute, and then I'll take one step away from the table. And I did that, and then talk for another minute, take another step away from the table, just slowly inching my way away from the table until we're finally in the middle of this empty dance floor by ourselves, like music playing. We're just sort of like bobbing our heads. And I'm just like, dude, this sucks. Let's get the fuck out of here. And like, just, we bail. I'm like, all right, this night's not going as well as it did last time. Let's go back to the hip hop club. This will be good. We'll get back on target. We'll be fine. Go to the hip hop club, show our IDs. Bouncer puts his hand on my chest and goes, hey man, you gotta be 21 to get in here. And I was like, what? It's like, we were in here last night. It's like, you shouldn't have been. I'm like,
it's like, don't tell me that. That's not
okay.
something you should tell me.
I was like, all right, to the beach one. We'll go over there. So we go into the beach club place and we just, it's live band playing cover music of a lot of the songs that we like. I'm like, all right, this is where we're going to hang out. This is a good vibe. We're chilling. There's no dancing, whatever. We'll just hang out. So as we're in this place, since it's still new to me, I imagine it's like sometimes when you're walking and you're like, I don't know what to do with my hands. You know, you're like, where do I do? I'm in this place. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. I can't just like sit and relax and enjoy the moment because I'm like, I've got to experience this. I'm not really present. So I'm just constantly like looking around. I'm like kind of shuffling around, just trying to, do I go to this table? What about this table? I don't know what I'm doing. And as I'm sort of just looking around, hanging out and whatever, I look and there's a girl just staring right at me, just staring. And
Same girl or different girl?
No, different girl.
Okay.
Different girl.
And is she like staring or is she like staring?
You know, she is just sort of staying still, just staring. And I kind of make eye contact and I look away and I'm just like, all right, there's no way she's looking at me. Justin knows this. I have a hard time accepting any sort of like attention. If it's our podcast and we get a spike in subscribers, I'm like, it's probably bots. There's no way anyone would want to listen to our stuff.
Doug is extremely distrusting when it comes to people paying any sort of attention to
I'm not
anything
much
he's
of a
doing.
flirter. I don't understand if people are flirting with me either. It's just, it falls on just this dumb exterior where I'm like, I don't know what's happening. So she's looking at me and I'm like, nah, there's no way. And I look behind me, there's a wall. There's no one else around. I'm like, all right, nah, it's something. I've stared off exactly like,
she's looking at this.
Right. I've stared off into space and people and realize I'm staring at someone and they look back and I'm like, oh, my bad. You know, it's all happened to us. I'm like, that's probably what's happening. So I'm shifting around the place, you know, and just, again, don't know what to do with myself. And then I kind of look back in her direction. She has moved and she's again looking right at me. And I'm like, huh, okay, well, this is kind of exciting and yet seems very dangerous at the same time. This is kind of aggressive. I don't really know what to do. So we're listening to a song, band's playing, having a good time. I feel a hand on my shoulder. I turn and I look and it's this girl. And she says something I can't hear. And I lean forward. I go, what? And she latches on to my mouth like a face hugger, an alien, just connects in and aggressively starts tongue lashing my mouth. And I am like frozen. And I don't know what to do. And I don't want to be rude. So I reciprocate, right? I don't know how to handle the situation. I'm like, I guess I will kiss her back. And so I do that, but time sort of freezes and super aggressive mouth kissing is happening. And then finally she detaches. And I'm like, ah. And she just sort of smiles and giggles. And she sort of puts her hands on my chest. She goes, wait right here. I'm going to get us something to drink. I'm like, oh, okay. And then she taps my shoulder. She goes, you're cute. And then walks off. My friend goes, dude, what the fuck was that? I'm like, I don't know. She was kind of staring at me. And then she just came over and she came over. I've never seen anyone order drinks that fast in my entire life. Like, it seemed like instantaneously she came back with 3 shots.
I'll get us drinks. Here you go.
I'm also a bartender. She just pulls them out or whatever. And she has them and I don't drink. Didn't drink then. I don't drink now. So I immediately hand my shot over to my friend who instantly takes them both. He's happy to do that because I'm like, I don't want anything. I've got a red flag here. I'm excited. I'm 18-year-olds. I'm a virgin. This is like some sort of story you read about, but at the same time, I'm like, this seems off, really,
right.
Really off.
Right.
And so she's just like hanging around and just, you know, hand on my shoulder and whatnot. But then I also realized there's this guy that's kind of also lingering not too far from behind her. And I don't want to say he looks like John Wayne Gacy, but he's got some John Wayne Gacy vibes. He's got sort of a chubby baby face, dark hair, but he's balding at the top.
Dressed like a clown.
Just like a clown, you know, holding like a rope, you know, and kind of going like this.
Introducing himself as John Wayne Gacy.
Yes, all these things.
You know the type.
Yeah, yeah.
You know,
Not
And
to stereotype, but
it's the actual type. He's got thick, like black rimmed glasses, and just he looks suspect. And he's just sort of like sitting there holding a drink, and I'm like, "Who's this guy?" And she goes, "Oh, hey, this is my friend. This is Colin. He manages bands." And at first, I'm like, "Oh, that's cool. I'm into music." But then I was like, "Wait a second. This sounds like bullshit." This guy manages, because he just kind of goes, "Hi," and like kind of does this and nods with his glass. I'm like, okay. And he just sort of like fades back into the shadows. I'm like, what is this? Why are you, is that your boyfriend? I'm like, what's happening? I was just so confused. And so she then like grabs my friend and I in this like weird triangle where she's holding on to, we're facing her. She's holding on to us. It's like, and she's trying to dance with both of us during the song, but we're really just bouncing all up and down, the three of us, like some sort of sports team that's getting pumped up to run out of the tunnel onto the field. Yeah. Like, it's so weird. And again, I don't know what to do. I'm like, well, she's okay. I just have no clue. I have no idea of how to handle the situation. We're bouncing and whatever. And then finally the song ends. She's like, so how old are you? I was like 18. And her face looked like someone had unplugged the router and then plugged it back in, because it's like she froze and then her face sort of drooped and her mouth went open and her eyes got wider.
Processing.
And I was like,
Processing.
okay, I don't like where this is going.
a little buffering.
Right.
Yeah, it's a very buffering sort of situation. And she just goes, oh. I'm like, that's cool. I don't need any more information. I think this is fine. My friend's like, at this point, getting kind of buzzed. He's like, how old are you? She's like, I'm old. I'm like, oh.
That's a bad answer.
Okay, that's fine. He goes, I'm going to guess how old you are. Please
Oh,
don't.
no.
Please don't. He
No.
goes, I bet you're 27. She goes, no, I'm older. I'm like doing the math. I'm like, okay, well, that's at least 9 years older than me. Okay.
Yeah.
He's like, 29. And she goes, no, I'm older. I'm like, okay, cool. We're heading into the 30s. This is really unsettling. And she goes, I'm 31. I'm like, oh.
What a teaser.
Okie dokie. Well, at this point, sweating profusely, don't know what's going on. This creepo that's sort of lingering. None of this stuff is adding up. She's obviously drunk. Eyes are kind of glassy, the way she's talking. I'm like, I don't know what's going on here. We got to get out of here. This is not okay. So I go, hey, we got to go. She's like, oh, see, this is so weird, right? Because she just automatically was like, oh, this is bad. You're way, I'm older than you. But I'm like, we got to go. And she's like, what? Why? And once again, blank. I have nothing in my arsenal to tell her why. I could just tell her the truth. You're 13 years older than me. This is highly inappropriate in some places. I don't know. It's probably not illegal, but not cool. And I would prefer to leave the premises so that nothing inappropriate happens and that we can just go on with our day. Or I can just be like, I got to go back to the room that's adjacent to my mom's room because I think that would be safer for the both. I could have said anything. I could have just walked away, but I didn't want to be rude.
Spanish final tomorrow.
I didn't want to be rude, but I'm
my
just sitting
dance
there
troupe is practicing.
Yeah.
I can't be late.
I'm the best dancer. They need me.
Did you
in
know I'm
rural
the best
Missouri.
dancer in rural Missouri, right? And I just sit there and I look like someone had plugged the router in my head. And then she just gave me this gift and she goes, you have a girlfriend, don't you? I go, yes, I do. And she's back at the room and she would be really disappointed if she knew what was happening right now. And she goes, okay, you can go. But, and she puts her hand on my shoulder. She goes, you have to kiss me for 30 seconds. And I could have just said no and walked away and just been like, no, thank you. I could have been polite, but I didn't want to be rude. And I go, okay. So I said, okay. And once again, the face hugger latches onto my face. And you would have thought she was digging for gold in my teeth or like it was hidden under my tongue or on the inside of my lip. Just this tentacle from the Kraken is just whipping around my mouth. It tastes sour because she had this shot of God knows what. And I'm just like enduring what's happening. I'm like, ugh. And then it's over. I'm like, break free. I'm like, okay, bye. And we go and grab my friend and get out.
I'd like to imagine that as soon as she started kissing you, the John Wayne Gacy guy just leaned in and goes, 1, 2, 3.
Because my thing too
4.
was like, I had questions. I'm like, well, who's keeping track? Are you keeping track? Am I keeping track? And
Is
then
there a
she
timer?
just did it.
Yeah.
I was like, all right, well, I don't know if this is going to be accurate or not, but okay, I guess. And then we break apart and I'm like, let's go. And we break and we go and we leave and we get out of there and we go to our bus stop to take us back to our hotel. And I'm just like pacing back and forth. And my friend's sitting on the bench. He's like, dude, I wouldn't let anything happen to you. I'm like, you're drunk, basically, at this point in time. What were you?
Bro, that lady just flossed my teeth. What are you talking about?
Like, what are you talking about? I was like,
You
this
let
is
it happen,
insane.
bro.
And I was just like sweating. And during the conversation, as we were sort of like making small talk, my friend had told her where we were staying. Like he told her the resort. And I was like, what did you do that for? And I was like, oh my God, we get on the bus and it's just like, I was feeling so uncomfortable. We get back to our hotel and I just double lock as if somehow she's going to find my room.
Right.
I'm just like, no. And I'm just like, don't tell my mom that happened. Okay. Just don't tell her. Like, we're not going back. We're not going back to Pleasure Island. I don't want to go back there. And
I keep forgetting it was called Pleasure Island.
right. And so months later, it became, was it tragedy plus time equals comedy? It became funnier to me. I'm like, oh, that was a funny thing that happened. And when I went to college, I had a creative writing class and it's like, tell us a story. I'm like, I'm going to tell you a story of what happened to me. And I named the story 31. And I was trying to find it because I'm like, where is that? But I don't think I have it anymore. And I printed it out because that's what you did back in the early 2000s. You didn't save everything in the cloud. You had to print it out. So I printed out this story and I don't know if I showed it to my mom or if my mom found it, but she ended up reading it and she was mildly horrified in that she's like, did this really happen?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, it did. She goes, why didn't you say anything? I was like, what was I going to tell you? That this 31-year-old lady just aggressively made out with me? Like, what would you want me to do? Like, it was done. And she goes, well, don't tell your father. And I'm like, why? You're afraid he's not going to let you go back to Disney World because there's some ladies that are creeping
You're
on
afraid
on
he's
his
gonna want to
son?
stop by Pleasure Mountain
Right? He's gonna go check it out. And then she
or
goes,
Pleasure Island. Sorry.
hey, I like Pleasure Mountain. It's like some secret place you only know
Pleasure
about.
Mountain's where the roller coaster is.
That's
Yeah.
right.
Pleasure Mountain's the one in Vegas, probably.
Yeah, right. And so she just kind of looked at me and she was just like, how come? She's like, why didn't you try to make it stop? And I was just like, I didn't want to be rude.
You raised me to be a polite boy, mother.
Right.
Well, the thing I can say is like, I didn't want to be rude.
So this sounds like it should be the story of why you never went back to Disney again.
But it's actually a story about how I got into MILF porn. So
Right. I was going to say, like, so what, were you not worried about ever going back, or did you only go back when Pleasure Island was closed or something?
That's a great question, because the best part about this is Disney is easily one of the safest places on the planet Earth. Like, it is so, like, the idea of like, I will let my 18-year-old run free in Disney World is no big deal, because it's just nothing bad happens there. It probably does, but they cover it up because they're like that.
Yeah,
I often
because
joke
it's
that
Disney and they have money and everything.
I joke that there's like Disney snipers that are positioned around the park, and if something starts going wrong, someone's just getting out of control, you'll see a little red dot, and they go, pew! A little dart hits you. All of a sudden, a parade breaks out in that very spot. They pull the person into one of their underground tunnels, and they're interrogated, debriefed, and shipped off somewhere else. So, like,
well coordinated there.
Bad things it's such a safe place to be. And so to me, it was like, yeah, this will be fun. Nothing to worry about. An 18-year-old running around potential drunk adults at an adult area of the park. What could go wrong? And I don't know. It was, I definitely didn't judge Disney World on that. It was just that person.
Right.
And I was like, well, cool. I don't need to go back there anymore. I've done this, and I have zero interest in, going to explore that. And my objective wasn't go there to get laid or do anything like that. I was just like, I want to experience this thing that I've seen and heard about.
The magic of Disney.
The magic of Disney, the happiest place on earth. It was such a, and then I started thinking, I'm like, what if the gender roles were reversed? What if?
No, that's what I was thinking the whole time. I was like, you were assaulted. Like, what do you mean? Why didn't you try to get it to stop? What do you mean? Like, might as well just ask you what you were wearing.
Right. A Blink-182 shirt, cargo pants,
I
and
was
a Hurley
thinking
hat
this whole
backwards.
time. I was like,
yeah, right. because I'm also, I mean, Sydney, you're 30, right?
Yeah, I just turned 30.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
I would like to think you would have the ability to identify an 18-year-old in a situation.
Well, not only would I be able to identify an 18-year-old, but let's just say I didn't. And then they told me they were 18. I would not have then made them kiss me on the face to go back to their own hotel room. Like I just wouldn't have. So I do have a story that is very relevant to what you were just saying. But to answer your question, like that's like as a 30-year-old woman, I would be more worried about getting that child home safely because I love how her reaction was, "Oh, I'm partying with this guy that I think is close to my age." And then he's like, "I'm 18." And then she's literally shook, right?
Right.
And then she just ignores all of that. And then she's like, "Actually, though, you got to kiss me to get back to safety."
Obviously, alcohol was impairing the judgment and all sorts of things, but still, in the light of that information, you'd be like, "Okay, I'll let you go, but you got to kiss me."
Well, and I feel like even when you're drunk, even when you're super drunk, the word 18 gets everybody. Like 18 like triggers everyone, no matter who you are, no matter how drunk you are. When a young person says they're 18, you're immediately just like
right. Oh, sober now, gotta go.
Yeah.
And all that, like when I became 31, I thought back to this. I'm like, all right, I'm not as old as I thought that person was, right? This is still a very young adult. And then as I've gotten older, I've seen other like 31-year-old people. I'm like, oh, right. Yeah, we're still basically children, more or less.
Yeah. The older I get into my 30s, the more I'm like, 30 is not old. 30 is not old.
My parents didn't know shit.
I keep waiting to feel like an adult. Like I'm like, I'm moving in. Doug and I are both moving into 39 this year.
Yeah.
And
what?
Yeah. And so like for me, I'm just like, fuck, I'm a year away from 40. That's really wild.
That's
I do not feel a day over 23.
Right.
Like in my mind, I'm like, I am so immature.
Yeah. And to think like, oh, my parents, when they're like, oh, they're 40, they have shit figured out. No, they don't.
No,
right.
No,
absolutely not.
Yeah, no, adults will always be whatever age my parents currently are and older.
Absolutely.
Like, so like right now, adults are, 60. That's adults and up. And then
which makes me scared. So then when we're 60 and 70, we're still gonna have shit figured out, gang. That's the horrible truth.
It never comes. It just is always a thing in the future that we're looking towards.
No one comes to you and goes, "Congratulations, Sydney. I'm here to present you your adult card. You've officially become an adult."
No.
Here's all the knowledge you'll ever need. Yeah.
Right. People just start one day asking you things like you're supposed to know stuff. And then you're like, oh, they think I'm an adult. And then you realize like, oh, wait, I guess I am an adult.
Yeah. It happens incrementally, right? Like you move out, you start paying rent, you pay taxes for the first time, you go to the doctor on your own. Like these little things happen. And then all of a sudden it just dawns on you like, oh shit, I'm doing adult things.
Yeah. Now, when people stop asking to see your ID for stuff and you're just like, like, I have bags under my eyes, but not that big.
I've looked like this for a while. So that those days are long by and I'm like, it's fine.
I think the thing about that story though, Doug, that really throws me off is the specificity with how long she wanted you to kiss her.
Yeah.
Like
it's a very drunk person thing, right?
Well, or
it's
that's
okay
something like a 12-year-old, right, would be like, we got to kiss for 30 seconds. Like it's a child thing. Like when you're just starting to kind of explore things. And it's such a weird juvenile way to say it.
It's like she read in Cosmo that it's only assault if it's a minute or longer.
Right.
Or something. Like
we can't get pregnant if you kiss for 30 seconds.
Yeah,
right, exactly.
This is not tracing a phone call. They do not need more than 30 seconds to catch you for what you've done. This is assault.
You were such a Charlotte that night, Doug.
What's that?
You were such a Charlotte that night.
I was, man. Such a Charlotte.
What's a Charlotte?
I've been rewatching Sex in the City.
I figured that's what it was.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm just gonna go say yes. I'm like Pride and Prejudice, maybe. Who knows? I don't know. I'm gonna go with it.
That's my reference for everything. Pride and Prejudice.
I just thought Charlotte was short for a charlatan. That's all.
That too. Yeah.
Oh yeah. And look, everyone here is right. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because the thing that was weird, it's hard to reconcile with is that she was incredibly attractive too. She was wearing like a tight tank top, cleavage was very out there, and she was very, very, very pretty. But just in the moment, just the fear that attaches, because the night before was great, right?
Right.
Yeah.
meeting someone but not really meeting them or whatever. And then this was like full the other side, like this is aggressive. Like we're gonna swap fluids.
You were
Like-
chasing that feeling though. You were chasing that first initial high, and you're like, oh,
Right.
I want that again.
I was like, this is so cool, just experiencing these things. Then I experienced it. I experienced what bar life is really like.
Yeah, you borrowed somebody's DNA for a second.
Yeah,
It's just all over you.
It was a wild time. But yeah, if like my daughter tells me this story, 12 years from now, I'd be like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
If
If your daughter was like, he found out I was 18 and then he freaked out and then he made me tongue kiss him again. And then I locked my hotel bedroom door. And then my friend was like, I wouldn't let anything worse happen to you. And then my mom was like, well, why didn't you try to stop him?
Right. I mean, it's like taking a movie that's a comedy
things.
and recutting the trailer to look like a
horror
film.
Yeah.
It's exactly what this would be, just swapping the genders. Like this was like mine was like, oh, it's a comedy, and then it turned into a thriller.
A CSI episode for sure.
Yes.
Sydney, what you
Law
said
and
you had
Order
a story?
Yeah, you have a similar story.
So you unlocked a memory that I had suppressed for a long time. So I used to live on right off Belmont and Clark. And I used to go to that Native Foods all the time when I lived there. That I don't know if you guys have been there. It's like a vegan restaurant. And so I used to go there all the time, and I would banter with this. I don't know if you would call them servers because they didn't really have servers there. Just somebody who worked there. I would just kind of like banter with him. I'll say server. Every now and then, a joke here, a joke there. Or I would go there with a friend and he would overhear our conversation and he would just kind of, if we were talking about a show, he would say something about the show, just, not intrusive, just enough to be very friendly. But I noticed he would kind of go out of his way to talk to me every time I was there. So I had just gotten out of like a horrible breakup. I'd been dating somebody for like 3 years at that point, and it had been 6 or 7 months. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to put myself out there. I'm going to, date around. I'm just going to see what Chicago has to offer. So one day I just walked up to the counter and I just gave him my number. And I was just like, hey, there you go. Text me if you want. You don't have to if you don't want to, if you're married or whatever, just here's my number. And I didn't hear from him for a day or two. And then right at about 2 days later, I get a text and he's like, hey, it's so-and-so from Native Foods. Sorry, it took me so long. I was just busy the past couple of days, but what's up? How's it going? So we text back and forth. And if I had to guess, this guy was probably, so I was 25 or 26 at the time. So he would have probably been 27, 28, 29 at the time. And we text for maybe a week and then we decide we're going to hang out, and we decide to keep it super casual. We're going to hang out in between my job and his job. He worked at Native Foods and he also taught yoga classes. And so we were just going to hang out for maybe an hour or two before he had to go teach a yoga class. And we decided we were just going to go for a walk. We were going to get some Starbucks and just go for a walk down to the shoreline. I'm trying to remember what that Lakeshore. I've only been gone for like 6 months and I still forgot what Lakeshore was. And so I meet him under the Belmont Red Line and we're going to walk from there. And the first thing I notice is that outside of his uniform, he looks much different than I remembered. His uniform was black shirt, black pants, black belt, black shoe, very standard, but he was wearing a shirt with like a cartoon character on it, just like a white t-shirt. And he had his white t-shirt tucked into khaki shorts with a belt. And then like khaki cargo shorts. And then he had black sneakers on with black socks pulled up to like his knees. And I was just,
that's a mood.
It was a vibe for sure. And I definitely am not one of those people who super judges individuals by their fashion choices, right? Wear whatever you want, that's fine. But it was just very odd. It was just he looked very 90s elementary school.
Sure.
Sure.
Yep.
Like he looked very Spanish textbook from the 90s.
Okay.
So I was like, that's interesting. I guess it didn't occur to me that he doesn't always wear slacks all the time. I'm one of those people where I just don't like wearing jeans. I like to wear slacks. I like to wear, that's just, I've always got like just a nice
Jeans
long
suck.
sleeve shirt on. Yeah. I always look like I just got off from an office somewhere. But I was like, yeah, whatever, that's not his vibe. So we're walking and we're talking and we're joking around and very funny, very polite, right? He's not trying to make any moves or anything. We're talking about movies. We're talking about books. We have a lot in common. He's heard of a lot of the same music that I like to listen to, all that good stuff. So we are headed back to the Belmont Red Line where he's going to get on and he's going to go to his yoga class. And he's just kind of talking about his future. And he says, yeah, and I'm really excited to be here because, whenever I turn 21, I have some plans that, and I looked at him and I was like, I'm sorry, what did you say? And he goes, yeah, whenever I turn 21, I'd like to do some things. And I feel like this is the city for it. And I was like, wait, how old are you? And he's like, I just turned 17.
Oh no.
And I was like, what? And he goes, I just turned 17. He's like, but I'll be 18, which like, we're all going to be 18. Like, what does that even mean? Right? Like, yeah, we'll all be 18. It's like, okay, To Catch a Predator. They're all going to be 18.
Right.
And I just stopped cold. And I step back and I look at him again and I'm like, of course he's a teenager. Of course he's a teenager. In his uniform, he easily could have passed for 30. Easily. Really tall, dark hair, glasses. But the way he was dressed, I was like, oh, he looks like an Instagram teenager. Like that's how they're all dressing right now. That's where I've seen that vibe before. Freaking teenagers. And I'm like, oh my gosh. Okay, well, see ya. Have a good day. And he's like, can I get a hug? He's like, no, I'll see you later. And he goes, do you live around here? And I said, yeah, I have to go. I'm really busy. And he's like, well, let me walk you to your door. And I realized I'm not going to get rid of this guy. It's just not going to happen. So I let him walk me to my door only because I had 2 male roommates at the time and he didn't seem dangerous. So whatever, like I just got to get out of here. So he walks me to my door and we do that whole thing where I'm on the stoop and he's on the ground and there's like this look between us. And he clearly thinks this date is going well because it was until I found out he was a teenager. And so, and when he said he was 17 and I made him clarify, I asked him, I said, how old do you think I am? And he goes, I don't know, 25. And I said, so you knew? It's like, so you knew this whole time that I was 25. Yeah. Like you knew this entire time that I was a grown ass adult, right? Because on a rare day where I don't have my eyebrows on, I could probably pass the 17. But like this guy knew that I was an adult. And so I was just trying to beeline for my house and hide. And in the interim, between when I had given him my number versus when we actually met, there was about a week and I had texted all my friends. I was like showing them screenshots of our conversations, as women do. They all knew that I was going to hang out with them that day. They were curious how it was going to go. And so we get to my house and I'm just like, okay, bye, see ya. And he's like, I had a really good time. And I was like, okay. And he's like, I would really like to see you again. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. Whatever. Anyway, bye. And, so I run up the staircase and I just go to our top floor apartment and I just slam the door and I lock it. And I don't know what I'm going to do. Like, I just know the police are going to come knocking on my door at any moment. Like, I know Chris Hansen's going to pop out and be like, why don't you take a seat? And so
he comes out of the kitchen. How did you get in my house?
Yeah. So who are you here to meet today? I have the chat, so you might as well tell him. So I just take off. I take off up the stairs. I run. I slam my door. I lock it. And I'm not proud of this at all. I'm not. But I just ghosted him. Because I've discovered in dating, when it's age or when it's something like that, they're always going to argue with you about it, right? They're always going to argue. You could say you're way too young. They're going to be like, but we got along so well. Age is just so right. So I just foresaw, and teenagers like to argue. so I just foresaw this being a long, drawn out thing, and we'd only hung out that one time. So I thought, I'm just going to cut it. It. Just go no contact. So he tries to text me the next day, and I don't say anything. And he tries to text me the next day, and I don't say anything. And he tries to text me every day for about a week until he kind of gets the hint and he just stops talking to me.
Yeah.
So about a year or two later, I want to say it was a year and a half later, I don't live in that neighborhood anymore, but I decide I'm going to have lunch there at Native Foods with a friend of mine.
I was going to ask, did you have to avoid that place forever at that point?
So I did. I had to stop going there for a long time, which was very upsetting, but it was fine for finances. And it's been so long that it doesn't even occur to me that he still works there. It's fast food. What are the chances that a teenager is still going to have one of their first fast food jobs?
Sure.
And I go there with a friend who just happens to be a guy, but it's not a date or anything. And we're standing in line and I see him bring a dish bin out of the back. And I'm like, oh no, it's this guy. And I see him out of the corner of my eye. I see him set down the dish bin and do a double take.
Oh no.
And see me. I see him see me, half bald redhead. You're not getting away from it. And so then he walks by closer and I just am talking to my friend, pretending like I'm not seeing him. And then he walks by even closer, like a shark. He walks by even closer and he makes a point to make eye contact with me and go,
oh no.
Like this, and keep walking.
Like a disapproving shake of the head. No, why are you here?
And he just glares at me. And I thought to myself, yeah, like a teenager. Yep. He acted like a teenager about the whole thing. Yep. So I made the right decision. No regrets. Right. No regrets whatsoever.
Talk about validation.
He acted like the teenager he was. And in that moment, his reaction just validated every choice. I hate ghosting. I hate ghosting. Ghosting is for emergencies only, right? And I feel like that was an emergency. I didn't want to go to jail, and I didn't want to spend a month arguing with a teenager. But
yeah, I think you made a good point about the age thing. Like, I feel like it only works if it works. Yes. I've seen people who I've met people that have very large gaps in their age in the relationship, and they're fine and they make it work. They don't make a big deal out of it. They're just like, It works. But if it doesn't work, it really doesn't work. So it's a very special case in my mind. And I'm always fascinated by the people that can make that work. Like someone who's in the early 20s dating someone who's in their 40s. I'm like, how can you find anything in common? Like, I can't imagine. Like, if you told me, Doug, you have to date a 21-year-old, I'd be like, they're going to hate me. I am not going to be any fun for them whatsoever.
Well, also my first thought would be, that just sounds exhausting. Like, I don't have the energy to keep up with the 21-year-old. No, thank you.
No. And I get on TikTok and I'm just kind of tired by young people. I'm not one of those older people that are like, your music sucks or whatever. Cause I recognize generations are allowed to have fun, but just like, I just don't understand these people that are, 15 years apart and they still can be in these reasonable relationships. I'm like, who's the one that's off? Right? Mm-hmm. Which one of them is the off one? Is it the young person who's just an old soul, or is it the old person who there's a reason nobody their age will date them? And I had a few of those when I was in my early 20s. I had a few of those where you would go out with people that were like 15 years older than you. And at the time you think like, oh, it's because I'm mature and I'm very good at conversation and I'm not like other girls. But then now that I am 30, I'm like, no, sis, no. There's a reason none of the other 30-year-olds wanted to hang out with that person. Like, sis, listen, there's a reason y'all got along so well when you were just out of your teens.
Yeah.
So,
well, it's weird too, because like the older, I feel like there's a very odd when you're younger, when the older person is younger, it's very weird if they're dating a 15-year younger or 10 or 12 or 15, whatever it is. The older you get, the less weird it gets. Yes. But then I feel like there is a threshold where it turns back again. And it's just like, wait a second, 100-year-old is dating is dating a 40-year-old. Something doesn't work there. Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like in between the age of like 35 and 50, it's perfectly acceptable to date somebody 15 years younger than you.
Right.
Yes.
But then after one of you crosses that 50 threshold, now you're in that period where one of you is in midlife and one of you is in late life. And one of you, so you go from their experience, all the young person stuff, and they need to catch up, to now they're experiencing all the old person stuff and you can't catch up.
Right.
That's so true. Because there's a window of time where 1 year is a huge difference. Just where it's like, whoa, you're dating someone 2 years older than you? Are you crazy? Like it's wild. And then there is that gap where it can expand and it makes sense and everything. But yeah, there's 17 and 25, there's a significant difference, but if 25 and 32, 33 could make that work.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Flip that around a little bit, but
I think when the first digit of your age doesn't match, it gets a little weird. When there's a 1 and there's a 2, or there's a 2 and there's a 4, that's when you're just like, I don't know.
That's why I freaked out when she said she was 31. I'm like, I'm 18. Like, we're not even the same like numerical decade here. Like, we're over a decade apart. Like, what?
Right.
No.
Right.
Danger.
There's this
Again,
girl,
to those that can make it work, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
There's this girl on TikTok that I follow that all of her videos are about the fact that she's 23 and her husband is like 43.
Mm-hmm.
And they're all these little fairy tale videos, but they're also weird. She did one where she said where we were this year, like this one particular year, it was like 1990 something. It was him in college. And then she put a baby picture of herself. All the comments were like, girl, that's not what you think this is. This is not a bragging right. This is weird.
Yeah. Don't do that. Don't go, when I was 5, he was finishing college. That's a bad thing to do.
Well, again, I think what it is if you're the type of person that needs to focus on that, then there's something fundamentally wrong. If that's not even a consideration in the relationship, then that's a relationship that can work. Yeah. But like someone like that, obviously this chick is hyper aware.
It's her brand.
Exactly. And I like, if you're hanging your hat on like this is a foundational part of your relationship and it's not just the connection, there's a problem there.
Yeah.
Right. When there's like a whole social media brand about how far apart in age you guys are, it's like,
right. Just have your relationship. Just go have it.
Yeah.
You don't need to do that. Yeah.
Right. And I feel like the same thing goes with anyone who has one particular part of their life be their entire brand. So she's scratching.
That's awesome.
Thanks. If you are, that people make fun of CrossFitters because all they want to talk about is CrossFit. People make fun of runners because all they want to talk about is running, cycling. But the age gap thing, when you make that a brand, it's just bizarre. I don't know. Yeah. And also, I also just don't understand it because I cannot physically find people younger than me attractive.
Interesting.
Like now that I'm 30, if you are 29, you are too young for me. Just biologically, chemically, it's the strangest thing. It's a very similar thing to teaching classes at Second City. The minute you're in my class, I literally will never be able to find you attractive. It just can't happen.
Interesting, yeah.
And so I don't understand these people who date their former students or their current students, depending on the situation,
depending on the year and the school,
yeah, or these people that are on dating apps and they have their age set to 10 years younger than them. I don't understand.
Yeah, like that's not going to come up eventually.
Yeah,
like
I don't know. It's like, what do you guys have in common? Well, she's the age I like.
Right?
She's gonna change.
I'd rather search by interests, and I'd like to set a cap on the age. That's kind of like what if I had to do that, I'd be like, listen, these are the things I'm interested in. Also, you need to be at least 30. Like that would be great.
Right. Well, at least I guess people like that girl who are attracted to people older than them, he will always be older.
Yeah, it's true.
As opposed to men who date super young girls, they get older. But if you're only older people, I mean, he's always going to be older. So I guess he'll always be your type.
Yeah,
I suppose. But
yeah, I guess there's different strokes for different folks. Not here to judge, but also keep that shit to yourself. You don't have to.
Different strokes, especially if you date very old people, then you'll probably dealing with those.
Yeah, I've heard comedians talking about how there's not enough shame in the world where people just feel like they have to share everything all the time on social media. It's like, where's the shame? You should be ashamed of this, and that's a good thing. Don't put it out there. Why are you posting this?
Yeah. I saw somebody rant on Reddit there, I don't know if you guys follow the page True Off My Chest, where people literally just these posting to get off their chest. And somebody posted a whole rant about how we need to kink shame. They were like, some of these kinks need to be shamed. They were like, some of them just need to be shamed. It's weird,
yeah,
you know?
That's odd.
Yeah. It was hilarious though. It was like that you could tell this person had been ruminating on this for so long. But
that's amazing.
The social media has done something to us, and it's everyone feels the need to have everything they do validated. And if anyone is like, well, no, that's not valid, they're like, well, I'm being attacked. Well, no, but what you're doing is very odd and wrong, and no one else needs to see this.
Keep that shit to yourself.
Yeah.
You don't have to talk about everything that's going on. Like,
right.
Because there's certain things to that are really cool. Like kind of going back to fitness, where I see people posting pictures of themselves getting fit, and like, that's great.
Yeah.
Don't do it in front of everybody all the time. My new thing, Justin, which I haven't brought up yet, that I get annoyed at the gym, is people will set up like selfie sticks from years ago. People have fucking tripods and shit that they put up in the gym with their phones so they can hit record while they work out. I'm like, what are you doing? Like, no, I would be mortified.
My fans demand it.
As part of my accoutrement, I've got my gloves, I've got my belt, I've got my tripod. Let me put it up while I do some tricep pull downs on the cables. It's like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, I'd be mortified. I'm like, oh, excuse me, guys.
When you go work out, you have to hire two PAs to stand with you to make sure no one walks through your frame. It's a whole ordeal. Yeah.
I'm like, do that shit at home.
And that's the other weird thing about it is they almost act like you're inconveniencing them when you walk behind them. Right. And you're like, you're the one that brought the camera into the gym. What do you?
This is a gym.
Yeah.
I'm here to work out. I'm not here for a photo shoot.
Yes. Like I am of the opinion, shame. I should have been shamed more when I was younger. I should have. I was like, I should have been shamed more. There should have been more people at my high school to be like, hey, that's fucking weird. Like what you're doing is weird. It's odd. And you're going to cringe in 15 years while you're doing the dishes, minding your own business. And you suddenly remember what you said or what you did, or like people should have absolutely shamed more.
Yeah.
You know, it's like that camp who says bullying is healthy for kids because it teaches them that some of the stuff they do is weird. I kind of like, to an extent, I kind of agree with that. Because when I would do something super weird and my whole friend group would be like, that's odd. I'd be like, yeah, you know what? I'm not going to do that again.
That's called constructive feedback. Right, and it's something that we should be able to take and be like, hey man, listen, I'm not saying don't do this, but it's weird. You know, consider what you're doing. You know, I don't want to shut down because there's pretty amazing stuff that people come up with that are innovative or whatever. But at the same time, it's like, hey man, that's weird shit. You should
express yourself, but check yourself too.
Within reason.
Yeah, absolutely. So I am honestly a little bit upset that I wasn't shamed more, because now I have all these very embarrassing and cringeworthy memories that I have to live with because everybody was too nice to tell me that it was real weird. So,
but now you have so much fodder for your stories though.
True.
Yes. That's a
100%.
deep well. Yeah.
It is a well that, and I just wonder all the time, do you guys ever remember something embarrassing you did and then wonder what else people remember about you that you don't remember?
All the time.
That keeps me up.
Yep.
It keeps me up.
I try to hope that my memory and my version of it is the worst version of it and not some version that I haven't considered, which is not true. Or the worst part is when someone tells me something I did that I don't remember.
That's what I'm talking about.
Where one of my best friends told me, like when we were in band, we were in junior high, that I used to, you know what gleeking is? It's like where you move your tongue and like spit like shoots out from these glands on your tongue. I used to do that to her a lot, and I didn't remember. She was used to gleek on me all the time. I was like, what? She goes, yeah. I'm like, oh my God. And for you to call that out as an adult means that it stuck with you, which means it really bothered you. And I feel like a real piece of shit right now. Like, I'm so gross. I'm so sorry.
Yeah. Oh,
the worst.
One of my favorite things to do for storytelling, and I usually make this an assignment for the students as well, is to take a story, usually a cringy one or a funny one, something kind of lighthearted, and call somebody who was there, whether it's a friend you haven't talked to for years, whether it's a sibling, and get their side of the story. You don't tell them it's for a class. You don't tell them anything. You just say, hey, do you remember this thing and see what they say. Because a lot of times they'll add details you forgot. They'll remind you people that you forgot were there, or they will view it in a totally different way than you did. You know, how we were talking about earlier, how you could take the same story and make it a horror film or make it a comedy. You'll remember something as being really funny, and somebody else will remember it as being the worst night of their life or something like that. And I love getting somebody else's perspective on the exact same event that I think I remember. But I do have a rule when I make that assignment is you cannot then get offended by what they tell you. You can't ask somebody their opinion on something and then be like, that's not what happened. You have to, you don't have to include it in your story. You can pretend like you never heard them say that. But yeah. And so like one of my biggest examples of that is when I was a kid, we lived in Cedar Rapids, Iowa for about a year and a half because my mom was there for work. Yeah. And we had this basement. It was this 3-story house. We had this basement it was not a finished basement. The house was from the 1800s. It was just your standard northern basement with laundry and a single light bulb hanging from the ceiling, cobwebs. And I loved it down there. I used to play down there all the time. I don't know why. You could not pay me enough money to go down there now, but I was probably 10. And I eventually wore my mom down until she put a bed down there so I could make it my room and sleep down there. I had adventures down there. Now that upon reflection, it is literally the scariest basement I've ever been in my life. But at the time I was just hunky dory living my best life down there. And I was telling my mom about this one day. I said, some of my best childhood memories are when we lived in Cedar Rapids and I had that little clubhouse thing going on down in the basement. That was the most amazing time. And we had a laundry chute so I could call up the stairs and they could call down to me. And my mom said, she goes, oh my God. She goes, the year that you lived in the basement was the worst year of my life. And I said, well, why? And she goes, that was the same year they found JonBenet Ramsey in her basement.
Oh my God.
And when I was a little kid, I was long blonde hair, big blue eyes. And the basement, when you went up the stairs to go inside, you could either go upstairs and out into the backyard or upstairs and into the kitchen. And she said, I just knew one night a man was going to come knocking on that door and take you away. And I would never know. She said that she used to get up in the middle of the night and come check on me to make sure I was still breathing. She like lost a lot of sleep just checking on me down there.
Shit.
Yeah. So that's why I love taking stories like that I thought was funny enough the way that it was 10 times funnier when the parallel to that is my mom thinking that I'm murdered every single night and they're going to find me down there in that basement.
It's just so funny because a lot of those things, like as a kid, it's just pure innocence, right? Yeah. Like I was like 3rd, 4th, or 5th grade in that realm. I was fascinated with fire, right? Like I think everyone is, right? Everyone's fascinated with fire at some point, right? I don't know. But what I would do is I would come home from school. Both my parents were working and I would come home to school before my brother and I knew where our boxes of matches were and I would take them and I would go to the side of our house because we had brick and it was easier to strike them on the brick to get home. And I would just light a match, let it burn out, drop it, light a match, drop, and we just have it. And I was an idiot and didn't pick them up. So there was just a pile of matches there. And then my mom was like, pulled me aside one day. She goes, hey, what, mom? Are you smoking? I'm like, what? Am I smoking? She says, yeah, I saw a pile of matches out on the side of the house. Like she is looking at evidence being like, someone in my house is smoking. And I'm like, no, and I wasn't. But all of a sudden I realized like, oh, I could see why she would think that. It was
nobody would just stand here and light matches.
Nonstop like a psychopath. And just like, oh, look at that fire. Huh, look at that fire. And I try
entertainment in rural Missouri.
I try to tell myself
truly
that
are cavemen.
Right? Exactly. Very much a Neanderthal. But I try to think of that when Natalie does something, I'm like, all right, Practical Doug is gonna be like, this is what happened. But then I also have to remember what it was like to be a kid and do something just completely absurd and be like, no, honestly, this is what I was doing. It's like, what?
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. Or some of the lies that you remember telling when you were a kid that are so easily verifiable that you're like, what? So I remember this one time I forgot my workbook for science class. And instead of just telling the teacher, I forgot my workbook so she could give me a little copied piece of the worksheet we were going to work on, I was like, yeah, I left my workbook at home because it was, I spilled grape juice all over it. It was covered in grape juice and I had to let it dry. But it's purple grape juice, so it was stained. And I didn't want to put it in my backpack because then it would stain everything. Forgot about the lie, brought it back the next day. And she never said anything. She never called me out. She was never like, I don't see any grape juice on that workbook, you dumbass. She just
not worth it. I gotta let this go.
Yeah. That's the one thing I will say that I love about being adult is your brain is much more friendly to the idea of saying things like, yeah, I messed up. Sorry.
Yeah. Oh God,
100%.
it's the best. Yeah.
It's so good to take that social pressure out.
Yep.
Like if I go back to the story that I told, I would just been like, no, I don't want to be near you. Stop touching me. Go away. Like,
Yeah.
This is not cool. You're just taking that just life.
Just like grabbing her face and shoving it away.
Just coming in, I'd be like, hey, what are you doing? No. I don't think so. This isn't cool.
No, thank
or
you.
actually having stuff to converse with people about instead of just being like, hi, I'm Doug. Where are you from? I'm out of things to talk about. Like,
Right.
Yeah. Not having enough information about the world to hold the conversation with anybody other than your own age.
Right.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, gentlemen, do you guys have anything upcoming that you wanted to plug or anything? Where can we find you? What are your social media handles? Anything at all?
You can find all of our podcast stuff, Mind Gap Podcast, at Mind Gap Podcast, and all our social medias. And please check out our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Mind Gap Podcast, for all of our content. We have our full episodes there. We have different bits of content. We also do all of our live streaming there as well, Tuesdays and Saturdays at 8 p.m. Central. By all means, come check that out. And Justin's got stuff coming up with 2 East 8th as well.
Yeah, you can follow me if you want to on Instagram and Twitter at Justin_Michael, spelled Mikel, and then 2 East 8th, 2east8th.com, and just the number 2 EAST, the number 8 TH, like an address, 2 East 8th on all social medias. Just keep an eye on what we got coming up. It's going to be an interesting 2022. So we've got some fun stuff coming up.
Hell yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Where did the name 2 East 8th come from? Was that where you were living?
So yeah, there's a building that most kids who went to Columbia College Chicago in the early to mid 2000s know this dorm, the 2 East 8th dorms. It was at 2 East 8th Street. And Drew and I, my business partner Drew and I, both lived there at the same time, but never met each other until years later. And so when we were coming up with a name, we were like, what about 2 East 8th? And we looked, they have since changed their name to 777 South State. Rolls right off the tongue. And so we're like, cool. So that's all good. And we just took that name. For the first 2 years that we had our business open, though, we got a ridiculous amount of calls and emails soliciting, hey, do you need corporate cleaning services? And we'll clean the like anything that has to do with real estate, like either cleaning or infrastructure. We got solicited so many until finally we worked our way out of the system. So now we're known with video production and not corporate housing.
So now we have a side gig where we provide corporate housing, and
yes, we'd like to be the biggest realtor for specific video production realtor.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Well, gentlemen, it was wonderful hearing your stories. Thank you so much for sharing them with I Swear This Really Happened. I'm sorry that you had that experience at Disneyland, but I'm glad that you continued to go back. I still think it was a huge red flag that it was called Pleasure Island, but whatever. And I'm glad that you didn't actually steal that fire hydrant, because I feel like that is absolutely a felony and that could have gone much worse. But it's
one day I'll have one.
I will find one.
Well, have your dad get you one. I feel like he should at least have that kind of perk with his
He's
job.
got some pull.
I like that. It's a good. Why did I never think of that?
I'm just saying you should have consulted me earlier, but well, thank you so much, guys. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having us on.